So as I looked over the roster of the attendees today, what I found is that most of them have some background in Medicare. They know something about it, they know a lot, they know a little, don't know enough to make a decision yet. So what I want to do in the limited time that I have is I want to talk about some things that may give you the ability to finally make a final decision about your Medicare choices. So what I'm going to talk about is some good resources. Where do you go to get information that you can trust? I also know you probably know there are a few places to go to get information that you wouldn't trust. I want to look at a basic flyover of Medicare. What's the framework? What's the structure? What's the cost? And the third point is, unfortunately, Medicare works in two modes. It works in the way that it's supposed to work, and it works in the way that it actually works. And if you get caught on the wrong side of that, you could be greatly disappointed in the future when your conditions today are not the same as your conditions in 15 years. But you don't have the ability to make a choice and a change now because you didn't set it up correctly in the beginning. So where do you go to get the best information? You want to get information that's objective and impartial. The only place to go in Medicare to do that is through the federal government. Medicare.gov, SSA.gov. But if you get tired of just going through reams and lines of computer data, then what I suggest to you, that if you're really serious and you want to get the best information at your fingertips, the thing to do is to go to medicare.gov/publications. They'll send you a 100-page booklet that will give you everything you need to know now and that you can refer back to later when you have questions that you didn't know you had now. As a fallback, you can also get, if I had it, I'd show you. I have this 16-page booklet that you can download online, and it will give you a superficial 16-page summary of everything you need to know. Also, because there's a difference between what Medicare is supposed to do and what it actually does, feel free to go to my website, get the experience I've had for the last 13 years in differentiating between the two of them, see what my clients say about my practice, GaryMedPlan.com. Okay, so Medicare isn't a monolith. It's made up of possibly 75 different choices that you can make, each one of them having a nuanced effect on what your outcome is. If we look at a poetic refrain here, a rose is a rose is a rose, Medicare is far more nuanced than that. If we want to put that into a flourish, what we would say is, there's an apt line from a play, Broadway play, in Bye Bye Birdie, which says, effectively, I once heard a poem, a rose is a rose is a rose, but I don't agree. Take it from me, there's one rose sweeter than anything that grows. Your quest in Medicare is to find your sweetest Medicare. Okay, talk a little bit about basics. Medicare is made up of two parts, the federal part and the privatized insurance part. You can't have a comprehensive program unless you have both of them. And there are about 66 million people on Medicare right now. So to really understand Medicare and how it came about, you have to understand how political it is. And the way I look at that is there's an analogy between another industry that I want to talk about, and that's the gaming industry. And so everybody's probably pretty familiar with gaming industry, whereas it says the house always wins. And the house always wins because they control all the levers and mediums of gambling. They also know the statistics of large numbers, and because they do that, the house never loses. In terms of Medicare, we have a similar situation. We have the federal Medicare program. That's a service, not for profit. Spend all they have. Don't limit anybody in terms of what they want to do. Has a standard of care, so they don't cover everything, but it's pretty straightforward. Then we have the second component, which is the insurance industry. That's a privatized entity that is for profit. Now, the process here is that they're going to be looking at a number of different issues. They're going to be looking at claims, costs, and profits. And so there will be an intermediation between their bottom line and your bottom line. So you need to be aware of that when you're dealing with them. So let me talk a little more specifically about structures and costs. There is one major choice amongst that array of 75 that may put an indefinable limitation on your future. Anybody wonder what that is? Well, we'll cover that, so just keep paying attention. Everyone that applies for Medicare has to apply for a federal A and B. That's the basis on which everything else happens. Medicare A and B only covers 80% of the cost, standardized cost. And the standardized costs are generally everything that most people are going to encounter. There are some individuals that have other needs that won't be covered. Medicare doesn't cover everything. So why did Medicare only cover 80%? It's politics. What about the other 20%? What are you supposed to do with that? Are you supposed to just write a check? Well, cardiac procedures can start at $500,000 and go to $1 million. How do you feel about writing a check for $200,000? Not good. Okay. So the politicians said, well, after about 7 years of people banging on the door saying, cover that 20%, finally came up with an alternative. Their alternative was to privatize the other 20% with the insurance companies. Why do you think they decided to do it that way? It's politics. So with that 20%, you now have 100% coverage. Medicare does not cover dental, vision, and hearing. Why is it that they don't cover those things? It's politics. Okay. Politicians seem to have this obsession with saving the taxpayers' money. That is what drives the politician. Want to make sure that your money is not wasted. And so to do that, they've come to the conclusion that the way to do that is to get government inefficiencies out of there and to get private business in there. So with Medicare, what we've got going on is Medicare has about a 3% overhead. Medicare doesn't do anything but provide a service. They don't intermediate in between you and your doctor. Whatever standard of care is, they say, okay, we're going to do it. On the other hand, what we have is the insurance companies, and in a privatized sense, they are costing more than does Medicare for overhead. They have the ability to control claims, to control costs. They also have this nefarious instinct that allows them to put their fingers on the balance and increase their profits. What we find, however, is that if you look at this from a statistical point of view, you look at fraud, waste, and abuse, it is endemic in any industry that pushes a lot of money in any direction. When you start sending pallets of dollars to Afghanistan, you have to understand it's not all going to get to the bottom line. However, what the politicians seem to have forgotten is that when you look at the fraudsters for a federal program like Medicare, and fraud, waste, and abuse is a problem with Medicare. It's a problem across a couple areas. One area, is small-time crooks. Small-time crooks are able to find ways to steal money from Medicare. Large corporations, business, and insurance companies, however, are in a different category. When an insurance company is found to have defrauded Medicare, what happens is the regulator says, bad on you, slaps them on the wrist and says, we're going to give you a little fine to teach you a lesson. And then the insurance company is going to say, well, that's fine with us, but we reserve the right to not reflect any guilt or innocence in this transition. And so while you could go to jail for fraud, the insurance company continues to merrily go along its way. There is no effective control over fraud, waste, and abuse when there is no penalty to offset the privilege of robbing. Okay, so I'll take the computer now. I've got it. Okay, so let's do a little flyover. So everybody has to have A and B. There's a reason I'm using two colors here. And this is the federal part. This covers 80%. And again, since nobody here has their checkbook out, I'm assuming you want to cover the 20% with somebody else's money. So how do we do that? So if we want a comprehensive plan that covers 100%, then we have to do one of two things. We have to use something called a Medigap, where an insurance company provides the other 20%. In this model, Medicare says, standard of care, whatever it is, we're going to cover it. Insurance company, you do what we tell you to do. You have no ability to tell anybody that they want to stop the process, they want to limit it. There's no way that the insurance company has any control over anything. It's this way. Medicare says you can go to any doctor that you want to in the United States, any hospital that you want to in the United States that accepts Medicare, and that's 97% of all of them. If you go to a doctor and you don't like what he says, well, then you go to a second opinion doctor until you find one that will be able to give you what you want along with a standard of care. So Medicare also does not cover drugs. Anybody take any drugs here? Don't raise your hands. It's too embarrassing. Okay, so Medicare doesn't cover it, but they demand that you have it. The only way you get a drug plan is through an insurance company. As you probably know, if you know anything about pharmaceuticals in the United States, is that it's a wild west. Drug companies do what they want, when they want. Nobody tells them anything different. And they get slapped hands quite a bit, but that doesn't change anything. So the Medicare drug plan is exactly the same way. There are probably 30 different plans, 30 different options. They're all little medieval empires. They do exactly what they want to do. They provide different costs for the same drug. It is what it is. But you have to have all three of these in order to have a comprehensive plan. There is an alternative to this comprehensive plan scenario, and it's basically what the politicians and Medicare decided was that, well, you know, we really love this privatized concept. We think it's just not big enough. We could save a lot of money if we could get the government out of Medicare. And so what the politicians said was, well, let's privatize the whole thing. In 2003, let's get rid of Medicare. Let's make insurance companies run it. That would be great. But they couldn't get it through. Not even the politicians could get this through. But what they got through was a privatized option that takes the place effectively of Medicare. And it's called Medicare Advantage. So what Medicare Advantage does is it says, you have to have A and B, but Medicare is going to back out. It's going to tell Medicare Advantage insurance companies, you have to cover at least what A and B would cover, but you're free to do whatever creative things you want to do to gain more efficiencies, you business people. So what that means is when you elect Medicare Advantage, what you're telling the insurance company is, okay, I no longer have any direct relationship to A and B. You're going to cover everything. You're going to cover A and B 80%. You're going to cover that 20% Medigap, and you're going to cover the drug component to it. Unlike this line, you don't have every doctor, every hospital in the United States as an option. In California, you have a county service center. So you have a limited number of doctors in an HMO that go to a limited number of hospitals. Go outside that and you can write the check. This gives you 100%. This gives you 100%. So, wow, that's a quick clock. Okay, so what's this going to cost you? Everybody is going to pay $185 per month per person for A and B. You could pay more, but you can't pay less. Down here, you're going to pay $30 a month to about $200 a month. Down here, you're going to pay a few bucks a month to about $200 a month for the premium. You'll also pay for the copay. That depends on the drugs you're taking. Over here, you're going to pay the $185, plus you're going to pay between $0 and $100 per month. You're also going to pay copays. Copays will be a function of whatever process that you're encountered, at whatever diagnostic process that's available to you. Well, it's been fun, guys. Had a lot more to say.